Many parents of at-risk children who are delayed and struggle to process information quickly, especially those living with autism, fear that society, especially our first responders, are not ready to respond to this population, especially during crisis.
The more exposure we can get anyone, the more we can prepare them for when situations happen or if they could happen.
Kevin and I are still learning every day about Landon and his autism. Our son is now 18 years old. Integrating Landon into society has become more concerning because he looks like an adult, but his abilities are not that of an adult at this time. We must catch up to typical kids his age, and no one can see that or know that Landon's delayed and struggles to process information unless we start to educate the world.
When our community understands that, it's so much better for our family members to be able to go out in society and not feel being looked at as something wrong with them. That somebody can communicate with them, somebody can interact, and do those things.
We wanted to make the Responders Unite videos as natural as possible so we can show that autism during a crisis intervention exhibits stress and anxiety, and we didn't want to trigger the kids that were helping us film. So we didn't prompt anybody about what we were going to film. We just basically told the officers, we're going to have a scenario for you 4 different times. And then we told the kids, you have a scenario that you have to listen to the police officers and take their commands and do what they say. And when we did these, especially when we got to the high risk last scenario stop, and we asked the officers to take the bullets out of their guns and use their real guns to pretend like they're responding to a high risk stop, these officers became very stressed out, and the kids didn't understand why they were stressed out. And one of the officers basically explained that the first thing that we learn when we get our guns in the academy is that gun safety is priority, and that you never point a gun, even if it's not loaded, at anybody. And so when you're telling the officers to do something that they've been training their muscles in their brains not to do, and then all of a sudden they're doing it, that stress became very apparent.
It was important to me that we did this right, that it was going to be received well. The police department gets chastised a lot, and officers really put it under a fine microscope. So I wanted to make sure that this is going to be done something was done right and going to be well received by the public and the audience who knows it's going to be presented.
In trainings, we use simulated guns even with officers, so pointing a real firearm to make it realistic was very nerve-wracking for me.
I wanted the kids to not be made afraid, right? We know that we're training, and we explain to them that we're training, but I don't want it to be an issue where we make them afraid of the police officer.
So parents don't want to label their kids. They don't want to have a stigma. They don't want to, put them out there as an at-risk population. But in this scenario, we wanted to say, I am a responder of autism, because we felt like it would be the best way to inform the officers that this person they're dealing with has some type of disability. And I am a responder of autism triggers the officer to remember that when you are dealing with autism, there could be potentially a delay in processing, which means you need to slow down the commands. The commands need to be one step at a time, and we really want to make sure that everybody works together in a slow pace, and that every response or command that's being done is a literal, command, because these kids, that's how they think, and that's how, and adults, this is how they think, and this is the way they respond.
Getting the kids more exposure to police officers, getting them exposure to just simple traffic stops when it could be something that can cause an issue. Having them get exposure to us would be beneficial.
We educate once a month, and we teach the at-risk population or the first responders about each other, but we also teach the community about what we're teaching the at-risk populations and the responders as well. Everyone has to understand the plan, or it will never execute correctly. Our community may be the one calling 911 and misinterpreting the signs for a kid on drugs or alcohol. We then teach the first responders exclusively about the at-risk population and the things they need to know, as well as give when they deliver the curriculum. They will need to teach the at-risk population in classroom settings throughout their city and ensure that these kids are learning these things. First responders present the curriculum to all the at-risk populations within their city, especially autism. And then those first presentation is the beginning stage of introducing the at-risk population to our first responders. And our first responders to get the hands-on, boots on the ground experience working with the at-risk population. This is the beginning of a relationship we hope to build from kindergarten all the way until adult life. Now, when the officers and at-risk populations encounter one another on the streets or in high-risk situations, there's a different understanding, and this is not the first time each of these populations are meeting each other for the first time. And we feel that will lead to a more de-escalated response.
It was a huge eye-opener for me, and now that I have trained with that, experienced that, I'll be more quickly able to recognize that, okay, my instructions aren't being processed, so let's go a different route, let's go a different way.
I'm glad that that I did this because I as well hope that us going through this is going to help other kids out there and officers out there with autism. That will help all of us.